I wanted to talk about the cloud, and it was interesting looking at the agenda this morning at all the names for the presentations, because clearly, the cloud had to be in there somewhere. But then it was what other context you put into it. So there's a lot of challenges, aren't there, in terms of running the IT services on behalf of students and on behalf of faculty. And this list of challenges, I guess, probably are only some of the challenges that you face, and those challenges exist for you whether you are a college, a university, some other research institution. But actually this list of challenges is exactly the same if you're a business as well. They have exactly the same issues to deal with today. But what's different, I think, is the situation that we find ourselves in. The services that you run have a completely different set of users to the services within a business and the control that you have over those users. And I think we find ourselves in a situation where you're having to deal with two completely separate tensions. A tension where it's rules versus anarchy. It's process versus intuition. It's step change versus do what you can imagine. And it's a process, an old world, I think, where things were under control versus a new world, which is all about innovation. If you can imagine it, you can go and do it. And the skills that are needed for that are two completely different sets of skills. You used to be able to be a navigator, to read the rules of the old world and to work out what you had to do. Whereas in the new world, you need the skills of an explorer. You need to be able to set off on a journey. Even though you don't know where the destination is, you might know the direction that you're going to travel in. And the challenge, I think, is that the old world is the institutional world, and the new world is about the individual. And you probably sit there struggling with that challenge every single day because you're getting held accountable for the old world. People will look to you to make sure you're running a service that complies with rules and processes and has change management processes in place. And your users, and you, if you are a user, sitting out there in the new world of the individual where nobody can stop you doing something, can they? You can just go and use technology and you can start to make a difference. And you don't have to be bound by the processes and the ways of doing things or the way that data should be used or the way that you want to interact with people. And it's a very clear challenge that both of these sides have to be managed within an education institution. You need to allow for both of those things. Now, I think it's become very clear from a student-centric point of view. If you look at the world of students, this debate about cloud or not is history, because they go and they use the services that they want. But I think what has become more pragmatic over the last few years and much more obvious is it's not just the students that are out there doing this, but it's the faculty as well. So people are going to create groups in the cloud. They're going to put information out there. They're going to go and meet there. They're going to do their professional work out there on what they see as websites, and I guess we this morning would see as the cloud, all over the place. And what challenge does that give you? One of the challenges it gives for us as a business, and for every business, is about the ownership of information. And I think that's exactly the same challenge for you as well, isn't it? Where does the intellectual property of your institution sit? Is it sitting within your systems, or is it sitting within somebody else's systems? And so that's the real challenge today, that these things are happening regardless of what we say in this room. There are millions of people in your institutions that are out there doing things differently. So if you think about IT services, what are the choices that you face? Well, one approach is the straitjacket approach. You won't do this. We won't let you do this. You will do things the way we want you to do them. And that's the way most businesses tackle the challenge. There was an example a couple of weeks ago. We had a big company conference, and one of our partners announced something at the company conference that was supposed to be confidential. And unfortunately, a number of people didn't realize that and twittered about it straight away. Now, in our business, we can control that. Well, we can't control that incident, but we can stop the next one happening. But in your situation, it's not appropriate to do that, because to add the straitjacket, even if it is a straitjacket that makes sense within that institutional world of ICT, probably isn't the way to stop things. So what's the other alternative? Well, the other alternative is a world of anarchy, of allowing every individual to do everything that they want to do. And that's probably not appropriate as well. So perhaps the right answer is to provide the safety net, to give people the ability to go and do the things that they want to do, but to provide the support to make sure that things happen in the way that you want it to be able to happen. And so we talk about this concept of the collaborative campus because when you look at it, there's a need for people to connect, to coordinate, to create information, to be able to communicate. And so how can you deliver those services, but deliver those services in a way that allows the freedom of the individual, but the control that you need from an institutional point of view? Now, this is a kind of show us your medals kind of slide, so I don't really want to spend a lot of time on it. But there's a message here that we think about the cloud and some of the questions earlier about, is the cloud out there or is it here? We think that this is about a journey with a number of endpoints. It isn't an endpoint that says that everything is going to end up in a big data center somewhere. And it isn't that everything is going to stay in a data center in your own institution. There's probably a number of levels of where information is going to be held. We've got big data centers in the US, we've got big data centers elsewhere in the world, we've got big data centers that we've just completed in Dublin. But the interesting thing is that doesn't match everybody's needs. The answer of having an EU data center doesn't match the needs of some parts of the UK government who say that the answer is we must have a UK data center, which may not match the needs of some people that say, well, actually, we want an English data center. And I'm guessing there's probably a local authority somewhere who's going to say, we don't trust our data in Cumbria. We need it here. And so there has to be a solution that works across all of these things, that it isn't just about putting it out there somewhere, and it isn't just about putting it on your own institution, but building a set of services that allow you to put it where you want to put the data, so that it becomes then an invisible decision based on the criteria that you have about where you want your data to be, the service level that you need, the control that you need, the flexibility. And we're kind of building across all of those different places. The bit that gets the headlines are the data centers at the moment. So I thought I'd better have a slide that shows you a data center. But there's a lot of focus on data centers now, but the kind of cloud services, some of the numbers up there around services that we run on a monthly basis every day. So is search something that is in the cloud? People going and we get 2 billion searches, I think worldwide. There's something like 11 billion searches a month that's done on the internet. Is that the cloud? Portal pages, we get about 10 billion. Is that the cloud or is that the web? There's a very grey line. User authentications, handling 30 billion user authentications a month. Now, is that a service that you would think of as being a cloud service? And is it something that you would want to put in the cloud or do yourself? So we're building up data centers. Now, this slide says we're building up data centers to run your services. Of course, it isn't, because the common characteristics that we're talking about apply across all IT users, not just within education, but there are some very, very unique situations within education. So each of the data centers we're building costs us £300 million. We're putting in, well, 10,000 servers a month normally, some months 20,000 servers. It's a bit disappointing, isn't it, that this is what the cloud looks like. Actually, I think the cloud relevance is probably about where the data centers are. The reason we're building our data center in Dublin is because it's cold, wet, and miserable. Because that allows us to build a data center that's got the maximum efficiency when it comes to the amount of computing power you put out in relation to the amount of energy that you're putting in. So Dublin's lovely because it's an average of -5 to 20 degrees centigrade, and it's wet, and we use 1% of the water that we would normally use for cooling a data center in Dublin. So I'm thinking that the Lake District becomes very attractive. I'm thinking that Scotland has got a completely new economy, and Iceland can completely rebuild itself if they can get enough cables under the ocean. There's an error on this slide. It says there it's 300,000 square feet of data. That's approximately 6 times the size of the Olympia exhibition centre. It's actually 303,000 square feet. So 3,000 square feet becomes a rounding error on a slide in terms of data centre services. But for us, it's just about automating those processes. But what does it actually mean for you? What is it that all this cloud thing is all about? Well, it's all about giving you the flexibility and choices. So it's not about thinking about data centers, and it's not about thinking about all of the criteria around that, because some of those things, you know, the security and all of those things should be handled by somebody else. And it should be a part of a discussion around a procurement. And we're not talking about that kind of thing now. But it's about the choices of where you put things. So it's either you put things in your institution, or you put them in the cloud, or you put them somewhere in between. So do you put your intranet into the cloud? Do you put your email into the cloud, which are some of the easier things? Do you put your storage into the cloud? What kind of collaboration services do you want? And where do you put those? Those are the decisions that you're going to face if you're not already facing them. And it's driven by that issue of how do you enable the services for the individual whilst managing the services for you as an institution. And perhaps some of those things do get moved by some institutions and not by others. So do you move your student information service? Or do you maybe not move your SIS system, but you do move your CRM? Do you move your managed learning environment? There's a very important question there, because you're moving some of your intellectual property into another place. So all of those things, the options are there. The decisions, though, should be based around the business need that you have. So our goal is to build a set of services that work across to allow you to focus on the things that you want to deliver. But I guess the kind of final point is, what does it actually mean for you? Well, it's good that it gives you more control. It's good that it gives you more flexibility. It's good that you continue to have control over your intellectual property, because if you don't focus on that, then you might end up in the situation that a university that we met in the last couple of weeks said to us, which was, well, we're not sure what our essential value is, because what has happened is the things that we thought were our value are out there somewhere else, that actually we don't own those things anymore, and the situation has completely changed. So what you need to be able to do is to provide a way to support the challenges that you're currently facing, the challenges that that diagram at the bottom summarizes about how you handle the institutional need versus the need to support the individual users. I didn't want to talk about the medals and all of the data center things that are going on. I didn't want to kind of get into the individual services, because I don't think at this stage it is about whether you choose particular services, whether Azure is the most important platform, and all of those things that we're doing, because I think the real and fundamental issue here is thinking about how the cloud fits into the model of computing going forward and the way that you think about it within your institution. Thank you very much.